Hello everybody, welcome to this week's episode of The County Seat. I'm your host, Chad Booth. Today we are going to talk about water. Not so much the flow of water from the mountains to the ocean, but what we are doing to make it more efficient in its delivery system for Utah's agricultural users, and how that may all be undone by new regulations that are being proposed by the EPA. This will have an impact not only on agricultural users, but may even affect you when you make a choice about how you water your lawn or even clean out the gutters on the edge of your house. We will start, though, by talking about efforts the state is making to improve the delivery system and help protect the resource of water within the agricultural community of the state.
It's so important for us as citizens to understand just what is involved to provide water for food and fiber and faucet, something that we often take for granted. We don't focus on too much without realizing all the preparation that has gone on since the pioneers were here, the upgrading of the systems, the maintenance of the systems, the safety of the systems so that we have clean and adequate water.
Today, civic leaders, legislators, and representatives from agriculture are on a tour of the infrastructure that makes up part of the Central Utah Water Project to see where the water comes from and the challenges involved in bringing the water to your tap. The tour stopped at two of the larger reservoirs on the system, Strawberry and Jordanelle, along with stopping at many pipelines, tunnels, and canals that make up the system along the way.
The storage facilities that we looked at today are long-term storage facilities, some of them being able to hold water for as many as 10 years into the future. Water levels are lower than what we've seen them. Jordanelle is probably at the lowest point since it filled, but they're not of a major concern at this point in time.
Water planning is a process that looks ahead and predicts water needs decades into the future. This is important planning in Utah because not only are we the second driest state in the union, but we also have one of the fastest growing populations. 80% of Utah's developed water is used for agriculture, an industry that generates $17.5 billion, representing about 14% of the state's economy.
That means that as growth takes place, then water is normally transferred from agriculture use to M&I, which is industrial and municipal uses. As that transfer takes place, every time there's an acre-foot of water that's taken out of agriculture, that's an acre that is not used for production. And as we lower the production capability of the state of Utah, it affects what takes place as far as our economy is concerned.
Utah's water infrastructure is doing the job today, but the systems that agriculture depends upon are also some of the oldest in the state. The easy water development projects have been done, so now is the time to continue with planning and investing in Utah's water future.
We wanted them to understand the effort and the investment that we have in our water system so that they can see what it takes to get that water to their homes.
As the state looks at future water projects, there is a concern that new rules coming from the Environmental Protection Agency and the United States Forest Service could create hurdles for development projects in the future. We will discuss some of these proposed rules in our roundtable. For the County Seat, I'm Derek Dowsett.
As you can see, the best intentions of developing water and providing resource can have unintended consequences. That will be the topic of our roundtable discussion as we delve into the regulatory issue that will be created by the new EPA proposed rules. We'll be right back with more of The County Seat in just a minute.
There is a place where the desert comes alive, where rain breaks forth from solid stone and gardens spring from blistered rock. There is a place with enough color to make a rainbow jealous, where boulders are bigger than buildings and cliffs are higher than clouds. There is a place that will straighten your step, tighten your grip, widen your eyes, and open your jaw. There is a place.
What would you do with an extra day in Utah Valley? Explore the Wasatch Mountains? Snap a family photo at Bridal Veil Falls. Cool off on Utah Lake or the Provo River. No matter what you're searching for, you can find it in Utah Valley. Bring everyone together.
You go through the day-to-day repeating what you did yesterday. Don't you wish you could access that piece of your life that's missing? Find the beauty, serenity, family fun, or anything else that's missing from your life in the Cedar City Bryan Head area. Gain access to your adventure, whether it's camping, hiking, the arts, festivals, or just a getaway. Visit cedarcityayl.com for details on all the adventures that you can access in scenic southern Utah.
There are a couple great things about the Uinta Basin. One is it's still small, it's community.
That makes you feel like when you go somewhere, you know everybody.
When you know your neighbor knows you, and you can trust each other. People look out for one another.
I grew up in the Uinta Basin, and I think that it's a good place to raise a family.
So we packed up our 3 kids, and here we came to Uinta County, and what a great place it was.
It's not too big, it's not too small.
And it has a lot to offer that you just don't get in the big city anymore.
Welcome back to the county seat. We are today discussing water in Utah. We've had a primer on what is being done to develop the resource of water and protect the resource of water rurally across the state with improvements to agricultural water, but we want to now turn our attention to the problems that arise with federal regulation of that water and some proposed changes to the Clean Water Act. Joining us for the conversation today, Randy Parker, who's the CEO of the Utah Farm Bureau Federation, John Harja from the State Public Lands Office, a policy analyst, and Representative Kevin Stratton from House District 58.
48.
48. Oh.
The great district of 48.
The great district of, the lower 48.
That's right.
Welcome to the show. Thank you, gentlemen, for joining us. Thank you. Let's start by covering exactly what the changes are, what you see as the most significant change. And you may each see it slightly differently with the proposed rule changes at the EPA is proposing.
From an agriculture standpoint, Chad, we're deeply concerned. The Clean Water Act, passed in 1972, I believe, exempted agriculture and agricultural practices. The EPA fast forward to their waters of the United States and redefining the regulatory relationship with the Clean Water Act, has said that they will exempt agricultural practices. However, that exemption is only if you comply with federal guidelines and federal documents through the NRCS and through other agencies. If you don't meet that federal standard, you can still be cited for violating on regular, common, ordinary farming practices, and could be fined as much as $37,500 a day. So we're very concerned.
John, from a state standpoint.
Well, you look at what the reason of this was. Navigable waters are the waters that are used for commerce. They have water in them, boats go on them, and commerce is moved around. The courts over the years have said, well, some neighboring waters might have the water necessary for navigation. What we see now, though, is if you look at St. George area, the Department of Transportation built the Southern Corridor Road out to the new airport. As they did that, on dry washes that currently have no water in them whatsoever, they were faced with EPA permits. The School and Institutional Trust Lands Administration was faced with having to get permission on their land, and anytime you have a federal permission, you need to follow NEPA. So here's private property being suddenly subjected to NEPA. The costs to develop go through the roof. So the ancillary effects of these proposed changes are just as troublesome as what Randy mentioned.
From a standpoint as a state representative who is engaged in your activities about protecting Utah's water rights, where do you see a problem with this, Kevin?
Well, we represent the people, and this ruling represents every citizen in the state of Utah. There's not a square inch within our state that won't be impacted by this proposed ruling.
Could you elaborate on that just a little bit? I mean, the guy lives in North Salt Lake up on the bench, And you know, he's going, how's this going to affect me? I mean, I don't really see it.
I appreciate that. That's a great question. I think what we need to do is we need to step back. We want to be, and we are seeking to be, wise stewards of the resources we're given, from the large rancher to the backyard gardener, what across the board. We need to make sure as we do this that we recognize the stewardships that we have, and that if we can just step back just for a minute, it goes to who would have appropriate jurisdiction on making the determination of what's done. Now, we want to be wise, and we want to do the right, do the best thing to enhance and strengthen our natural resources. But how this would impact, for example, someone that you referred to, is it would impact, there would be jurisdiction given the EPA to regulate how that person would water their lawn, how they would clean out their gutter, what they would do in fertilization and when it would take place, what takes place with water in their pipes, how they would fix a pipe in their home that's broken.
You mean you literally think that it conceivably from application of the rules go to a point where if you were going to, you had a leaky pipe and you're a do-it-yourselfer and you decided to go from copper to PEX or from galvanized to copper, they would say that's not an approved federal pipe, it's not an approved federal product, and so therefore you can't use it?
I think what we need to do is we look at policy, we have to look at unintended consequences. And when you look at unintended consequences, you have to look at the extremes. And carried to an extreme, the language of this proposed ruling would regulate that, yes, in my reading.
Wow.
It's clear that the expansion of authority proposed here would affect things like the stormwater protection schemes of the state and the water delivery schemes. So in essence, if you are watering your lawn in such a way that causes problems to go downstream and isn't caught by the stormwater scheme, then yes, it is possible that you could go that far. So it's broader than just saying we're going to protect water. It's all of the things that are covered by the Clean Water Act now are brought in, and that includes everything you do with water.
From an agriculture standpoint, Chad, the concern is very similar. We in Utah, we're an arid state, second most arid in the country, and irrigation water rights are such that you divert water out of a stream, you flood irrigate, you irrigate across your property, and then there's a return flow that a downstream farmer or rancher would use as his water right, that return flow. That has historically been not subject to the Clean Water Act. Region 8 EPA, in a meeting I had with them some time ago, said that return flow, if it's collected in a ditch, will now be in violation of the Clean Water Act. So it's troubling how far they can take this new regulatory authority they're seeking to impact our lives. Now, from that standpoint, what they're seeking is beyond what Congress ever intended. I think it's clear in the fact that Congress never passed the Clean Water Restoration Act of 2011, which is the foundation of what they're doing in the proposed redefinition of waters of the United States. This is federal government overreach.
So this is an end run around legislation that didn't pass muster.
Absolutely.
By the administration or by the Environmental Protection Agency. We've got 2 minutes left, John. I would like to ask you a question on this. Is this an issue? I mean, I was always under the impression that water rights were the domain of the state, and that the State Water Office was the ultimate authority on water.
Both the constitutions of the United States, Utah, and federal law passed by Congress clearly state that the state of Utah, or any western state with a prior appropriation doctrine, first come, first serve, is the one that allocates water. What we see here is an attempt by a lot of federal agencies, not just the EPA, to condition the use of that water in such of a way that could and often does reduce what you can actually do with the water. The amount that you can actually divert, the amount you can actually deplete or use is clearly affected by these types of rules. And the federal government, through what might be its own legitimate way to get things done, is attempting to affect what the state authorizes. They are not very good partners.
From a regulatory standpoint, and John can help me with this, the state of Utah has primacy in regulating water quality. And as he noted, Congress from the Ditch Act of 1866 through the McCarran Amendment, and even Flipma said these rights belong and are the sovereign rights of the states. We have the right and primacy to even oversee water quality issues. That's something that EPA granted to the state of Utah that we need to be very careful of.
Very good. I would like to follow up with that comment right after this commercial break. So John, when we come back, I'll get your follow-up to that comment. Stay with us. You're watching The County Seat. We're having a conversation about water, EPA's proposed new rules and regulations, and what kind of impacts it will have on both urban and the rural portions of the state. We'll be right back.
When you buy Utah made and grown.
I'm a Utah's own vegetable grower. I care about the foods I produce.
Because when it comes to quality local foods, I understand the importance of Utah grown and raised.
The jobs that we enjoy are vital because Utah's Own supports our communities.
As a consumer, I look for Utah's Own products because Utah's Own is good for me and it's good for Utah.
Live here at home, Utah's Own.
Why is it that environmental protection and economic development are often placed at odds with each other? In Duchesne County, they have both. Here, modern industry and resource development go hand in hand with some of the most pristine wilderness in the western United States. A strong economy balanced with a lifestyle of exploration and discovery. But don't take my word for it. Go visit them. Duchesne County, close enough for business, far enough to get away.
Kanab, base camp for your southern Utah adventures. You belong in Kanab.
Remember those good old days? The places you went with your family when you were young? Reinvest in those old memories by making new ones. Beaver County is the perfect place to start that new tradition. Enjoy your favorite pastimes with family and friends. Connect with the history and culture of Utah in a place that's looking to the future. Modern conveniences minus the hustle and bustle of other locales. Beaver County, your adventure starts here.
Welcome back to the County Seat. We are today discussing the EPA, the proposed rules changes that would change pretty much significantly the relationship states, individuals, agricultural users have with the waterways of the United States. We left the last conversation talking about downstream flows and traditional use of water and state sovereignty as farmers' rights had a return flow issue that when water comes off, it goes on to the next user in downstream. From a state supremacy standpoint, John, is there something from a policy standpoint you want to add to that?
Well, it's entirely accurate. When the rain falls in the state of Utah, it's controlled by the state of Utah. It's not controlled by the federal government. The water engineer of the state allocates it. You might remember a couple of months ago there was discussion about rainwater coming off roofs. That's the point. And if the EPA is attempting to influence the way the flow is regulated, it could seriously impact the way the state allocates water. In addition, the state controls the water quality system, as Randy mentioned. We have the Division of Water Quality to make sure that permits are issued for pollution or lack thereof. And all of that is put into question by this new jurisdictional ploy by the EPA and the Corps of Engineers.
So at this point, we're talking about flowing water.
Surface, yes.
Okay, and this is an area that is strictly the focus of the EPA, but they have actually, from the Environmental Protection Agency standards, I understand they have backed away from saying, well, we want to deal with groundwater as well, and they said this is not a jurisdiction for us But apparently it is a federal jurisdiction, or it's attempting to be.
It's being claimed as a federal jurisdiction through proposed rules, Chad.
How is that possible? Which agency?
Well, and that's interesting because the EPA and the Army Corps of Engineers have never gone that far, but the United States Forest Service, in proposed directives, they have a directive that is not even a rulemaking. They can just impose it within their manual, and what they're seeking is, or suggesting is, through the Organic Act, which is a Surface Management Act, that they have the right to control groundwater, and they claim that the interconnectivity with the surface water flowing from the forest lands, they will have the ability to establish an overlay of regulations, anything that originates or flows from the forest system lands. In Utah, that's the area where we collect our water. That's the winter snows, that's the summer rains. 70 to 75% of Utah water originates on forest system lands. Can you imagine the upheaval that will create for 150 years of water law and an economy that's built around that they will bring into question whose rights those are?
Well, Kevin, if you ever wanted to tie this into an urban, if I recall, the entire Wasatch Front watershed originates in the forest.
That's correct.
And so if the Forest Service exerts this, is it conceivable that they legally or regulatorily could just shut off the tap if they chose to?
Well, again, carried to the extreme, and then you look at unintended consequences, that could possibly be the case. What we have to remember, Chad, is that there's maybe a line upon line, step-by-step process that takes place, and our agencies are continually pushing the boundaries and pushing against the fence, so to speak, of the rights there. So we need to really look at the whole picture in context and make sure that we're looking and discovering any of the unintended consequences that would be. I would say unintended consequences, giving the agencies a benefit of the doubt, but you really have to wonder what is the policy that they're trying to create and then build upon in the future.
In a way, it seems almost like nation building. I mean, I hate to say it, but it's like grabbing authority for a future application.
Easier for the federal government agencies to control everything themselves, because then they don't have to ask permission. And so they are slowly moving the fence posts and aggregating authority to themselves so that they're in charge.
So you think it's more of an ease of managing their own
one of the things I'd like
system
to do.
And here's a real troubling part of this. Within the directive that they're proposing, they want to be able to analyze adjacent lands and the impact of drawing water from the groundwater on adjacent lands to the Forest Service. That's a private property implication.
Ooh, that's a good point to consider. We will pick that up when we come back. We'll be back with the county seat in just a second.
Color. It's something that can be seen. But have you ever wanted to reach out and touch it? Experience it. In San Juan County, Utah, color comes to life like nowhere else on earth. Color can be more than an abstract. Color can be your gateway to a new world. Visit San Juan County and explore the past, present, and future in a way that you've only dreamed of. San Juan County. Color your experience.
Unlimited opportunity for adventure. It's all about knowing where to look. ATV adventures, rock crawling events, art festivals, and wildlife events. The opportunities are limitless. Plan your stay and join us for Millard County Stock Show, May 26th and 29th, and Days of the Old West Rodeo, June 11th through 13th. Pick your adventure in Millard County.
What's the story of your life? What chapter are you on? Did you happen to get married recently? Perhaps you found your lost puppy at the animal shelter. Or you're taking an art class at the senior center. There's that flu shot that kept you well last season. And don't forget the museums and historical sites your family loves. And all the fun you have at the County Swim Center. County services from search and rescue to maintaining roads bring tremendous value to each of our lives. We're the Utah Association of Counties, helping you build the story of your life.
Welcome back to the county seat. We've been talking today about water issues, proposed EPA rules. We've discovered some I would say, adjacent rules or regulations that are being proposed by the Forest Service. It's kind of a sobering thought. Explain to me exactly how the Forest Service writing is redirecting how we think about water at a state level.
Well, they're proposing that anything that, if you have a state water right, for example, that is required to obtain the water from Forest Service lands, you also have to get permit from the Forest Service to be on their lands. And they're proposing to say clearly that if that withdrawal of the water even if it's on neighboring lands, it affects the Forest Service, they can deny its use. That is a constitutional taking up front. So we're prepared to try to oppose that and make sure that they're more reasonable in the way they position. Now they could position the water, but not stop it.
Does it seem a little overwhelming? I mean, when you sit here and look at all of this hitting all at once, you create laws all the time. Does it boggle your mind?
Well, at times you feel like you're in a fight to swat flies that are coming from every direction. You don't have anything in your hands to do it. But what we're dealing with, I think, Chad, is a culture, a federal culture that's really impacting the states. And we see this in the use of the Endangered Species Act. We see this in the use of what we've been talking about today. We see it in public lands. Mm-hmm. And there's some imbalances in the power that takes place, not only between the federal and the state, but the agencies. And what we need to do is we look going forward. Obviously, there's an October 20th deadline that there's opportunity for comments to be received on this ruling. We have, working with our federal delegation, they're working on addressing the issue. I know our executive branch is working on it. But this is an isolated symptom of a bigger problem, a cultural problem. And as we look at what we're doing as a state legislature, and with the rights and opportunities we have, we need to make sure that we're in the constitutional bounds that are before us, and we're moving forward in protecting and pushing back on this overreach.
Do you think state legislation demanding federal government compliance actually can go anywhere? It's a tough question, but it's a fair one.
You have three arrows. You can educate, you can negotiate, you can litigate. And hopefully those things will turn into proper legislation that will be used. And we're going to use every arrow on our quiver at this point.
Okay, very good. Last question. Should there be if the rule goes through, which it seems like in the last few years that happens anyway, what's our alternative? Defunding?
Yeah, Congress can act. They can act through defunding. They can try to disapprove the rules. We can challenge in court, and we're prepared to do that. And you can start a public relations campaign to overturn it. All of the above.
We, through the Farm Bureau, through the American Farm Bureau, and 6 million members around the country, we're asking for them to withdraw both of these rules because they're absolutely in violation of their authority. And we too will sue.
Okay, well, it sounds like the gauntlet's been thrown down on this issue. Gentlemen, thank you for joining us today. Thank you for inviting us into your home with the county seat. We ask you to share this episode and all of our episodes with your friends. Go through our social media, and let's get the word out about these local issues, because local government is where your life happens, and you need to be part of the solution. Thank you for joining us on the county seat. We'll look for you next week. If you like this video, then we invite you to subscribe to our channel, The County Seat. You can do that here. And we invite you to share with your friends. We also invite you to get all the latest up-to-date information by following us on our social media channels. And if all else fails, make sure that you watch The County Seat Sunday morning at 8:30 right here on ABC4 Utah.